and welcome back to the Emagia AI for Finance podcast. I am 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃. I am your host. It's good to be back here in 2026 for the relaunch of our series. Today we have Naomi Secor from SSON, the Shared Services and Outsourcing Network, obviously well known for their deep analytics and in all things related to global business services and shared services, especially in the areas we care about, like order-to-cash, accounts receivable, and whatnot. Naomi was actually one of our first guests when we launched this show back in 2024, and is our first repeat guest here on the AI for Finance podcast, since that particular episode was very well reviewed and people wanted some more of that. So thank you for joining us again. I know you're in very high demand.
Oh, well, hi, Brian, and thanks for inviting me back. So it's a real honor. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So we'll let you tell a little bit about yourself, but you are Global Managing Director for SSON. You've been with the organization for over 16 years, doing excellent research, helping with everything from events to digital platforms, to deep analytics and so on. Obviously, our viewers have a huge interest in things like automation and autonomous finance and AR-powered solutions. So I guess why don't you tell us how that's impacting how you do your job right now and what you're bringing to people in the industry.
That's great. Yeah, I have. I've been with SSON for actually almost 20 years. Started with mostly events, kind of building and running our shared services and outsourcing events globally. And we have the North America one coming up March 16th to the 19th. And I know you'll be a sponsor there. So looking forward to seeing you. And yes, have worked across building out SSON research and analytics, which is where I sit now. So we provide all of kind of the intelligence that powers our industry, from benchmarking, location insights, GBS advisory, all of that research, and as well as certification. So kind of, connect the dots here in SSON. We obviously look to make sure that we are providing, the utmost content and networking opportunities to keep the industry moving forward. And we are seeing some really exciting stuff with global business services, and looking forward to talking to you about that today. And your timing is impeccable. We did just release our State of Industry survey and report, which looks at, the state of shared services in GBS, looks at, where we are with automation, AI, specifically, agentic AI, and how organizations are approaching kind of lights out finance. We look at, what talent means for the future of shared services and what those shifting priorities are. And so, yeah, I know we're going to get into some good conversation today.
Yeah, it's the state of GBS is an excellent report. Deep dive. I think everybody should go out of their way to take a look at that on the SSON website. Now, I saw a recent blog article that you wrote about global business services and how they've become such a different business. Things like how 45% of GBS organizations now provide data analytics or business analytics services. How there's more management of enterprise master data. In essence, it's no longer a narrow set of back office processes. The jobs have changed for everyone from the CFO to the controller and on down the line. And I also saw in that article that order-to-cash is a heavy focus for at least 75% of GBSs currently, that you all pulled. So given all this, how much of a necessity right now is it to become more autonomous, more AI powered, just more dealing with these new technologies to meet all the new expectations that maybe weren't in play before?
Yeah, I mean, global business services is really no longer, organizations don't see it really as an option. It's become so widely adopted. So yes, the State of Industry report, and we can furnish a copy. It's on the SSON Analytics website. But roughly 85% of organizations are committed to the model. So whether they're already operating as a GBS, actively digitizing or planning to transition to in the next 3 to 5 years. And, we have seen that continued kind of increase over the years. And it's because, like you said, we're delivering far more than, just transactional cost savings, and really delivering value for the enterprise. Now, value, we can unpack that quite a bit, but it's being able to, deliver those tangible outcomes for the organization. And finance is certainly a backbone of this. You mentioned processes like master data management. When we look at like the sheer scope of processes included in GBS, and we track about 100 of those, and some really interesting ones kind of creeping up, which you can see in the report. But as you may assume, kind of at the top is still those end-to-end processes like order to cash, procure to pay, report to report. But we do see increasingly moving up, 45% of GBS organizations providing data analytics, 55% manage enterprise master data. So no longer transactionals, support. This is really decision enabling work. And I think that, finance sits at the center of this. And, order to cash, I mean, this is a core focus for, three-quarters of GBS organizations. So, a lot of expectations around cash flow, customer experience, revenue enablement. So, and as far as automation goes, we still see we have a long way to go. Ambitions are there. We recently also published a report on agentic AI in GBS, and we see that the intention, the desire is there. But in terms of adoption, organizations are really at the piloting phase. And so, we're going to continue to track that. But generally speaking, automation kind of levels are still relatively medium maturity. So I think we're going to see that increase quite a bit. Certainly, we've been talking about lights out finance for as long as I've been here, which is about 20 years. So now that we're actually starting to see some of this in play, is really exciting. And I think, organizations, what they're telling us right now is they certainly need help with, getting the data in order. They're sitting on top of mounds and mounds of unstructured data. And it's how we can organize that and put frameworks around that to kind of get us ready for automation, and implementation of these processes.
Okay, so you mentioned that things are in a pilot phase. I know SSON has stressed this, and I think more so than a year ago, companies are more embracing the idea of things like generative AI, agentic AI, all these advances that they're no longer theoreticals. They're here, they're in play by forward-looking companies. But of course, finance is also not looking to go fully autonomous and turn all the keys over and whatnot. With that being said, for those in GBS and shared services, specifically, deep into the order to cash operations on a regular daily basis, what kind of use cases can actually best be applied for them if they are just in that early phase or they are just getting ready to get in the early phase? Like, what are some realistic ways to apply, agentic AI advancements?
Yeah, well, I think you have to kind of look at your processes and, evaluate, I mean, what's going to, deliver kind of the most value, where you have some data in place. Because, a lot of these operational decisions, they're AI supported. And finance teams, they want to focus on optimization, and risk. And being able to control that. So, I think within order to cash, there can be a lot of successful use cases. We can look at prioritizing collection actions based on risk, behavior, likelihood to pay. These are all the types of functionalities that things like, generative AI can bring to GBS. Um, Dispute resolution paths, recommending those, supporting credit decisions, orchestrating workflows across billing, collections, customer service. So tremendous amount of opportunity. I think in all these cases, certainly humans remain in the loop. So, as we talk about the shift from kind of manual execution to there's still this decision supervision, there's still this need for human in the loop. But I mean, those are some specific, use cases where we see that this can be applied. And you're right. I mean, when we look at the top, investment priorities today, certainly agentic AI, generative AI top the list. And RPA is still very much there as well.
So what are some of the unrealistic expectations and use cases that you see out there? Because of course, uh, I think part of the problem with use of things like AI 2 years ago and 3 years ago was, people thought this was a magic bullet, and people thought, oh, I just get this AI software and my problems are solved, and it had nothing to do with cleaning their own data or having a roadmap or what have you, and people ended up disappointed because the
Mm.
expectations didn't align with the reality. So what are some of those unrealistic things to look for? And if you have any, and of course you don't have to name the companies, I know you can't, but if there are any horror stories out there of don't do this, what not to do when implementing these things, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear.
Yeah, we had a recent conversation. It was a roundtable with GBS leaders on this very topic. And, one had quoted that one of the misconceptions is that, agentic AI can fix broken processes. Because I think, if data is fragmented, ownership's unclear, autonomy can amplify some of the problems rather than solve them. I think another common mistake is saying that we can jump straight to full end-to-end autonomy in order to cash. It may be possible for some organizations, and certainly with the help of partners, that transition can be a lot more smooth. But our data shows, thinking about our agentic AI survey, no organizations yet operate at kind of full maturity, fully autonomous end-to-end processes. So progress is accelerating in specific domains, for example, invoice processing. But, I think that we need to approach it kind of carefully and make sure that we have, again, a very, very good, solid framework in place to manage our data, govern our data. Those are some of the misconceptions.
Okay.
I mean, what are
So
you seeing, Brian? Your customers are telling you.
well, I mean, it's really a mixed bag because, we talk to CFOs on one hand, and we also get out there on the road a lot and talk to, credit managers that are in their second and third year with small companies. So it's a really wide array of things. At the higher level, it's, efficiency is everything, and we need to get projects. Like we need to get AI projects because up above wants to see these happening. So it's almost like they have to do something even if they don't want to do something. But at the same time, if you're a CFO, efficiency as a goal is not a new thing.
Yeah.
CFOs have always striven for, greater efficiency where possible. I think when you're on, maybe the credit person's end, it's like, well, how can it help me with collections, and how can it help us do this without taking all our jobs? Which, kind of gets back to points you guys make in the report and your research of how, no one is looking to turn things fully over to automation and autonomous finance at this point or any time in the foreseeable future. So I think we're kind of seeing that kind of widespread. But I do know that across the board, the conversations that I had with people in more recent months at conferences, at booths, at networking mixers, etc., have been a lot higher level and elevated to where it's less kicking the tires and less education and more, okay, well, this is how we think we can apply it to us. Is that correct? So, and I think that's a good thing. I think people, that's why things like the AI Finance podcast exist. That's why your reports exist. And, we're trying to move the conversation into a higher place for everyone. I think that will benefit all GBS companies in a way. But since we mentioned conferences, I'd be remiss to bring up the SSON conferences. Of course, the annual conference in Orlando is happening. The annual conference in Estoril, Portugal is happening as well. I believe there's one later in the year in India. As these are approaching, people that you're talking to, the high level people that are coming in, what kind of subtopics in this world are people maybe most interested in? Are there little pockets of CEOs like, oh, I wish I knew how to apply this to blank specifically?
The conversation has moved a lot at these shared services weeks, over the years. I mean, cost will always be table stakes. That's exactly what it is right now. And, GBS organizations are being asked to deliver value. And that's where a lot of the fun comes in. So, of course, cost, efficiency, these will be primary drivers. But when we ask the question around, what drives value, it's that customer satisfaction. It's that ability to drive value in organizations. And so it's exactly how our organizations approaching that. Certainly, we have boot camps, master classes, if you will, in all of the end-to-end process areas and GPOs and the significant role they play in executing a lot of these tasks. So we will have those boot camps. We will have, agentic AI focus days. And also, the talent equation, the conversation, it's very, very real. So, when we look at the report, we see that things like problem solving and digital proficiency rank as top skills. And how are organizations actually creating these new career paths? And, what is the training looking like in-house? As we do need to upskill employees to take on a different type of work, it can be very, very exciting, right? AI is not taking people's jobs. It's those with AI skills that are. And so but GBS is fully committed to this. It's fascinating when we look at, where do these AI projects reside today? I mean, even if I think about the data a year ago, not as much sat within GBS or within digital centers of excellence within GBS. But now when we look at the data, more than half of these projects reside directly in GBS, and for the other ones with heavy influence over that. And I think that just speaks mountains to where this is all going. And this has happened because we have proved how successful we are with automation, with RPA for, decades. And so now as we approach these more mature technologies, I mean, GBS is a natural sandbox for these projects. So I think that's heavily influencing all the way, from boards and CEOs looking at GBS to help drive the digital transformation across industries. And also when we look at, who GBS is reporting to, most of the case, it's the CFO or, the CIO, but that's barring significant influence there as well. So certainly operating models, talent, technology, and how we can speed up the business cases for this. When we talk about why some of these projects stall, a lot of the times takes a lot of time to get these business cases in play. And also just the conversations around sourcing, and what, organizations are needing from some of their BPO providers, their technology providers. So very, very interesting. Again, you mentioned at the very start of the conversation, these non-transactional, more value-led processes that are now coming in scope under GBS. And I think about Order-to-Cash and just the tremendous opportunity there when we can think about, autonomous finance and the fact that, this can really be a driving force and free up even more time for us to continue to be a very value-led finance organization, be a consultant to the business, et cetera. So lots to talk about.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, well, I know you have a limited amount of time. Like I said, you're in high demand, so maybe we'll end it with just one or two more questions. But going forward, we've talked about a lot about where we are and what can be happening the next few months. But if we're going to look out to a year or look out to the end of decade, what is the future of the workplace where GBS and shared services order to cash operations jobs are concerned?
Yeah, I think we're going to see automation adoption and maturity increase because we're seeing that in every iteration of our research. So I think that that's going to kind of leapfrog maturity this year. I think we're going to have some really good use cases to be able to talk about where organizations are actually applying this in practice. And I think we're going to see, GBS becoming kind of the digital engine of the enterprise. And I think, the influence is just going to continue to increase. So I think organizations need to continue to focus on value, on outcomes. We're going to see us be kind of internal change consultants for the business and problem solving. And I think that this idea of kind of autonomy within whether it's finance or HR is going to be very, very cool to see because if you look at the progression of shared services, 20 years ago we talked about kind of back office, transactional efficiency, cost, and now that, that narrative has changed so much. And I think that in the next year, we're just going to be able to focus on, how are we driving innovation for the business. And GBS is going to be the heart of transformation. So I think that's very, very cool.
That does sound very cool, and it is an exciting time to be operating in this world for sure. Do you have any other parting shots or things we didn't get to that you really want people to think about for the next year or so?
Certainly if you can come to our events, it's an awesome opportunity to talk more about the stuff that we talked very briefly about today and meet Brian and so many of other partners that come to these events. And also, data is certainly the backbone. So we'd always love to talk to you what we're doing at SSON Research and Analytics. We provide all of the metrics and benchmarking insights across several data sites, location insights, which is a big topic as organizations reevaluate their footprint. And just I encourage you to take a look. So do get in touch with us.
Well, thanks for all of that. That was great. And thank you all for tuning in or listening in as we are back with the AI for Finance podcast. Looking forward to see you again in a couple of weeks, and feel free to scan our free archive at your leisure at emagia.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and take care.